If you're looking to get lost in gorgeous, Pixar-like graphics and animation as smooth as butter, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is definitely the game for you. If you're a long-time fan or looking for any depth at all, you may be disappointed. A majority of the conversations about Rift Apart are about how undeniably gorgeous this truly looks. Look at his ears, holy, look at his eyes! I can't help but think it's because there's not much else to talk about. Rift Apart is underwhelming. Where the series used to stand out and shine, Rift Apart incredibly fails to capture what made the Ratchet and Clank series as good as it was. More so than the 2016 reboot, this game fails to uphold the three key pillars that made Ratchet and Clank as beloved as they are today: gameplay, characters, and story. Oi! Before you and the Rule 34 army start trying to crucify me, let me show you why, as a superfan, I feel the way I do. Yeah?
Qwark-tastic!
Besides the shift to an incredibly well-built, seamless experience alongside the technical marvel of rifts and pocket dimensions, the overall gameplay experience has been completely stripped and overly simplified. While movement is faster thanks to the hover boots, mechanics core to the series such as Clank's long and high jumps have been removed with a lack of meaningful platforming the series is known for. Rifts, despite being the main conceit, I mean it's in the bloody title, strangely lack greater purpose other than acting as infrequently used warp points in combat or entrances to pocket dimension puzzle areas, of which hold probably the best platforming sections of the game, whose downfalls are that they are short and entirely optional. It really is a shame because the sort of platforming that's possible using these rifts and pocket dimensions could have been pretty damn interesting. Enemy encounters quickly become repetitive by over-recycling the same 3 or 4 enemy types. If you want to level up your weapons, you're stuck to replaying the same laborious arena since enemies can't be asked to return to the planet you've already completed, absolving planets of any replayability possible and a hollow feeling to each unless you start a new game in challenge mode. Speaking of the arena, since going commando, the arena has been a staple feature of the series with a varied list of challenges, all of which being challenging and highly rewarding through new gear or a shit ton of bolts. Rift Apart's attempt at an arena is like diving into the kiddies pool. It's really shallow. Remember the impossible challenge? Yup. Bolts as a reward soon become redundant since they're incredibly undervalued and practically given to the player during normal gameplay, which is ironic since the series began by taking the piss out of capitalism and consumerism while making the player use some effort and to afford weapons and armour they purchase. The biggest joke, however, is if you collect 10 spy bots, 10 spy bots, right? You earn the opportunity to purchase a rhino, the universe's most powerful and destructive weapon, for free. Collectibles such as these spy bots are as easy to find as opening up a map and going to the point on the map. These only happen if you have the Map-O-Matic, but even so, I'm sort of surprised at the point of getting the Map-O-Matic, the game didn't decide to start playing itself. The Map-O-Matic isn't new, it was in previous games, but at least it kept the challenge of finding collectibles by only marking the relative area of the secrets and collectibles you can find. It's also very weird that if you collect 23 gold bolts before the final fight, you can actually activate infinite health and ammo before the final boss. But it wouldn't be a Ratchet and Clank game without, well, Clank. However, Rift Apart manages to take the once interesting and fairly complex Clank puzzle sections and turn them into the most simplistically dull the series has ever seen. Puzzles are the only time you get to play as Clank 2, by the way, because apparently the space-time continuum being destroyed isn't the time or place for Clank to transform into a giant fucking warbot. But that can't happen because that would require someone during the story to actually give a shit about Clank and fix his legs. Unfortunately, the de-evolution of Clank doesn't stop at gameplay, it also affects his character. Now, you might be thinking, but Jack, this is a kid's game. Story and characters don't matter as much to them. Tell that to games like Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper and Undertale, and Chrono Trigger, and Ratchet and fucking Clank. Rift Apart seems so obviously uncomfortable with the very thought of inter-character conflict or true character development that it cuts these scenes short or quickly backtracks so as to not say anything too concrete that it affects the overly rigid story they've already planned out. If they were to allow these characters to flex their personality, develop, and bounce off other characters naturally, developing the story around these character beats, they could have accurately represented the characters this game is all about. Clank is the morally angelic, cautiously methodical, and analytically positive half of the duo, stopping at nothing to accomplish their goal. At first, he may come across as just a sidekick, but soon you realise he's fully capable and willing to take care of things himself if need be. Did I also mention he's a full-blown master of karate? Rift Apart just seems so hellbent on making the guy come across as utterly useless and incredibly insecure of himself. Yeah, he feels responsible for causing the entire situation, but if this was the Clank we know and love, this would only drive him to make it right, regardless of the handicap. That's not to say that Rift Apart wasn't able to capture the intelligence, kind-heartedness, and willingness to do the right thing Clank is known for, even if it is while he's being tossed around like a talking backpack. What it forgot, however, was that he once scoured the galaxy looking for the hero to save the universe, only to realise that he was one of those heroes all along.
After all those hollow films, there is one thing you should know by now. Do not mess with Agent Clank.
When it comes to Captain Qwark, he's forced into the shadows. Not as much as Big Al, whose only reference is a giant fat balloon. There is a possible reason as to why he's not in this game as often as we'd like, but out of respect and privacy, we're not going to be talking about that. However, for being a pretty mainstream character in the series, and for the main villain to be Dr. Nefarious of all people, Qwark's very own nemesis, it seems pretty odd that he's not in it just a little bit more, seeing as Qwark is the sole reason why Nefarious is a robot in the first place.
Captain Qwark, you've put on a bit of weight since last we met.
Yeah? Well, Courtney Gears didn't seem to mind. That's what makes it so good, Janice.
However, this only highlights the main issue Rift Apart has regarding its supporting characters and the entire gimmick of this game. What is the point of having dimensional parodies of characters if the originals aren't primarily featured beforehand? Returning fans won't have a moment to reconnect before the swapperoo, and new players won't really understand the link between the originals and their dimensional counterparts. They won't have a clue who these characters are, but I guess that's why it's all shoveled into the character gallery, am I right? As for Mr. Zurkon, shut the fuck up. Then we have Nefarious himself, who is fortunately represented perfectly, vocally and physically.
Did I do it? Oh, what is this? What's with all the neon?
Character-wise, he's an utterly disappointing character and comes across as also utterly useless. Nefarious always has had a tendency for stooping low just to gain the upper hand, but he was never incompetent like he is in Rift Apart.
How many times you beat this guy?
Clearly not enough.
Can I try?
Be my guest.
Although his screaming's pretty much on point. This is supposedly the same supervillain that's been the series' staple recurring bad guy, but here he's unrecognisable. He's also weirdly sidelined for the majority of this game, only to be forced into radio clips in your ship, which serve nothing else other than a reminder that he's actually in the bloody game. A big reason why this character doesn't really work in Rift Apart is that his character is greatly supported by everybody's favourite sarcastic robot butler, Lawrence.
Feel it. My heart is pounding like an anvil.
Oh, this is the best part of my day.
Lawrence is one of the best supporting characters in the series due to how well he contrasts with Nefarious in both tone and personality. They are exact opposites. Nefarious is loud and overzealous and overly keen to rid the world of squishies, while Lawrence is sarcastic and disinterested, who relishes the chance to clap back purely for his own amusement.
And as for you, Agent Clank, I have far grander plans for you. All right, Lawrence, you can turn it off now.
Oh, may I, sir? What a treat.
Without him, Nefarious doesn't have a personality to bounce off, or someone to prevent us from tuning into the love story of Lance and Janice.
Oh, Janice, you'll always be the love of my life.
You really should have that looked at.
He is shown briefly during the credits of Rift Apart, showing him settled down with his family, which is a cute touch, but I can't help but think he should have been in more of a role in this game, or at least a better cameo. But then again, how could he even compare to this beautifully generic piece of shit? But the main issue with Nefarious, the thing that truly grinds my Courtney gears, is how Rift Apart mistakes him for a villain in over his head with petty lines like,
We're going to a dimension where I always win.
but it doesn't matter anyway because he fucking dies. But there is a reason why he's portrayed in this way. And it's because he's not actually the main villain. The fantastically talented and golden voice Robin Atkin-Downes positively surprises in his role as Emperor Nefarious, Dr. Nefarious' dimensional counterpart. His character perfectly contrasts Dr. Nefarious, but that's to be expected since they changed his entire character to fit what they wanted to do here. It works, but at the cost of turning Dr. Nefarious into a right knobhead. Emperor Nefarious completely obliterates Dr. Nefarious and basically turns him into Igor, which, if you're familiar with Nefarious, will completely and wholeheartedly irritate the living shit out of you. Although on his own, he's a pretty good character. It really is dangerous territory in writing, taking an already established protagonist or antagonist and changing what made them them. It alienates people's solidified understanding of characters and undermines everything that came before. He's been used and altered to support a story, something that new characters should be created to do. But do you know which other character has had their ass dragged right through the glass and is now barely recognisable? Of course you do! There's only two characters I haven't mentioned yet, and I'm saving the best for last. Let's talk about Ratchet. Both Ratchet and Clank within the first hour and 30 minutes of Rift Apart are portrayed pretty perfectly. Ratchet animated, amusing, and full of personality. Clank calm, collected, and wholesome, both full of chemistry.
You think a crushing defeat is all it takes to stop me?
I mean, yes.
Well, think again!
And looking goddamn gorgeous. Then the story starts. Ratchet undergoes a complete personality transplant that makes even the reboot and most online personalities very jealous. While most of Rift Apart's more light-hearted and wholesome scenes, especially those when reunited with Clank, capture one side of our favourite Lombax, it fails to showcase the full range of who Ratchet is. No snarky jokes,
Plumber's crack. What did you just...
minor wavering of priority.
We need that answer.
And we have to protect her.
Okay.
no second dimension to this character at all. Ratchet excretes only the most morally perfect characteristics because that's how heroes are supposed to be. OG Ratchet had a streak of self-interest to him, which eventually evolves into something more personable after the first game, making him even more likable.
Oh yeah, I've got mad skills. Mad yeah. A difficult challenge, but one that a trained commando...
Hold on.
Ratchet has always been the cheeky hero who knows when the time calls to be serious and when he can be more relaxed about things.
I come to you in this, your darkest of hours, to shine the flashlight of justice on your galaxy.
Flashlight of justice?
But the recent games have completely overridden that for a one-dimensional, stereotypical hero trope. I honestly don't think I saw true character retrogression since the reboot until Rift Apart. He developed from a sort of cheeky, likeable asshole to nothing more than a modest hero.
Captain Qwark had so many, wonderful qualities, I just don't know where to begin.
Such as...
Okay, he was really tall, and he had a unique fashion sense, and he had a really big chin with kind of a sort of a, well, you know, a butt shape. Well, you know, I think I've droned on long enough.
One of the reasons I think characters are represented in such a contrasting way is because the writers wanted to mould characters to fit a more detached and accessible story instead of shaping the story to complement existing persona. Changing an existing character's personality is fine, it's their world after all, but it's extremely difficult because they are already existing characters. If the 2016 reboot is terrible for the perfect hero trope, Rift Apart is demonstrable. What makes these characters already perfect is that they're imperfect. Rift Apart paints everyone as angelically shallow. Newcomers would never believe that Ratchet and Clank at one point hated each other.
If they are working for Chairman Drek, they may know where he is.
Is that all you can think about? Drek this, Drek that? I got my own problems.
If you cannot see the importance of this situation, you do have problems.
Yeah? Well, if you're so smart, how come you fell for Qwark's stupid trick?
Because the personalities have changed, they just don't bounce off each other anymore. Hell, everyone is so perfectly tolerant of everyone and everything, killing someone's dog would be a simple misunderstanding. These characters used to complement each other.
Ratchet, we have company.
Where?
Behind you.
Where?
Behind you.
Very funny. You having a good time?
But there's one final character we've yet to talk about. One you've been waiting all video to hear, and the time of waiting has ended. Let's do this! Jump into the cold void with me! Here we go! The plumber.
Geronimo!
Rivet is not a bad character. She's just not interesting. As Rivet tightly parallels Ratchet as his mind-numbingly obvious dimensional counterpart, there's no space for her to express a unique personality without it falling flat on its face. Because it conflicts with the personality she's mirroring, when they do give her some depth, it often comes off as out of place, annoying, or just plain rude.
This is extremely unnecessary.
The only reason Ratchet doesn't have this problem is because he never falters or deviates from the perfect hero trope, even in confrontation. It works, but because it lacks so much depth, you'd have to be a twig to fuck it up. If Ratchet is heroic, Rivet is heroic. If Ratchet is modest, Rivet is modest. If Ratchet is kind, Rivet is kind.
So you're just gonna give up on her? Because you're afraid?
Says the big hero who's too scared to look for the other Lombaxes? At least my fear makes sense.
You bitch! Gameplay is another great place where you can expand and express personality, similar to what Insomniac did with Miles Morales. But seeing as the only difference in Rift Apart is big purple cat smashy squishy with tenderizer, they clearly didn't add any exaggerated swagger. In the Yakuza series, Kiryu, Majima, Sajima, and everybody else, have unique fighting styles reflecting their personalities. Kiryu is direct to the point, Majima is quick to think but quicker to act, and Saejima is slow to the mark but will crush your skull. Yes, these games don't exactly compare, but because they're games, they both have the same opportunities to convey different experience outside the narrative alone. An opportunity Rift Apart didn't take. As a Ratchet and Clank fan since it came out in 2002, I really wanted to love the story in Rift Apart, but it's so superficial I just couldn't. Evil robot is evil, has a hissy fit and automatically wins. The only Lombax left finds the other only Lombax left, find and fix a rock and commit murder. They were definitely moments I enjoyed, but overall, you know your story is lacking when it's easily overshadowed by an absolutely phenomenal musical number during the credits, which somehow also manages to shit on Nefarious. In a trend for recent games, Rift Apart continues to obfuscate any sense of continuity between installments using events across timelines by contradicting events of previous games with those of the reboot. For example, if it does continue from 2016, how would they even recognise Nefarious post-transformation? And why would Clank believe Nefarious is even still alive? During the intro, Qwark also mentions the duo would save the Hall of Heroes. But that can't have happened because Hall of Heroes is only in the reboot. However, Clank fixed the Dimensionator, and the presence of the Dimensionator itself means it continues from Into the Nexus. How can Ratchet and Clank be celebrated for the events of the 2016 reboot if the story also carries on from events that happen in games from before that? And where's Clank's jetpack?
That's right, I am the man.
But the most infuriating story inconsistency, not unique to Rift Apart, is the last Lombax story.
Hello? Aren't you forgetting someone?
Oops. Oh, I meant,
Angela Cross, a Lombax from the second game. And Insomniac's insistence on ignoring her is, at this point, hilarious. Besides some pretty obscure mentions, it feels weird that a once integral character is completely ignored, especially when they made this storyline.
Last time I broke out of this place was with Angela. I haven't seen her in a long time.
Me neither, mate. Even in Going Commando, the second game, Ratchet was never surprised to see another Lombax. But he was surprised for other narrative reasons. Another issue that really scuffles my boff is that they made a random new Lombax that also happens to be the only Lombax in her dimension before bringing Angela back. It's probably because new characters increase accessibility for their new target audience, but really adds to how contrived the story is.
Angela? Is that your name?
Ratchet was calling you something quite different.
Oh, was he now? Anyway,
It's mentioned in countless videos and you're probably sick of it by now, but the narratives of the PS2 Ratchet and Clank games were layered with clever, cynical references and parodies of capitalism and consumerism, making for deeper and mature themes beyond the most obvious view of the narrative. What's that you say? It's just a kid's game! Most games, films and TV shows are usually laced with deeper meaning and even the more mature jokes. You just didn't realise it at the time, but the older you sure does. So many people have focused on the graphics, praising it for looking like a Pixar movie, and they're right. But unfortunately, it doesn't share the depth of a Pixar movie, even with how shallow they've become recently. Games like Ratchet and Clank never used to worry about whether the little kiddies understood absolutely every single little detail, joke, or symbol. They made the obvious obvious while retaining some depth and edge for everybody else. That was the personality of the Ratchet and Clank series. Just like the cartoons you used to watch as a kid where you can't believe you never noticed or understood the deeper meanings or edgier jokes, yet you enjoyed them all the same.
My daughter tells me you're a man who's good with his hands, Ratchet.
Sir, I swear I never...
It was a series simple enough for kids, but with depth and personality for everyone else. Rift Apart is a game for kids, treating their age as their IQ, and you along with it. It's also a shame that on a live stream, some of the writers said they found the original writing cringe and maybe they haven't grown up. especially with writing marvels such as
The kids love their social medias. Hashtag Gadgetron.
This game is rated E for everyone, but it should be rated F for fetus. The PS2 games had the same rating, but truly catered to everyone, proven by varied gameplay difficulty and the occasional mature theme the series is known for.
I thought we agreed to put that jungle business behind us. It was mating season. How could I have known she was your sister?
Rift Apart, contrary to the game's conceit, is extremely one-dimensional and should have focused more on being a narrative-driven, character-rich, colourful platformer and less on being a glorified tech demo. The developers may have wanted to create a simpler experience in both gameplay and story, and that's okay. Developers aren't and should never be tied down to what made a series great in the past. They are free to explore and reimagine the titles they own whenever they feel is right. So many great games have been reimagined from classic series and have gone on to be the second coming of Christ. As a fan of Ratchet and Clank since it was released back in 2002, and despite the mediocrity of recent releases, I've been excited for every single new game. Unfortunately, Rift Apart was all glam and no bam. But that's okay. The younger me will forever replay the series he grew up with in a euphoric cocktail nostalgically shaken by DJ David Bergeau. What doesn't work for me might work for you, and it probably works for a new target audience. Being one of the last 3 greats left standing, I'm glad people had the chance to fall in love with their Ratchet and Clank. I'm forever grateful for the opportunity to reunite with my 2 best friends. But even so,
What a load of bullshit.
Join you at the top.
Yes, they would!
Join you where the stars all shine.
And boy, I'm so freaking hot!
You're scalding.
I should have them up!
But you will not.
It's all kinds of